You're listening to Progress on Purpose, the podcast for women pursuing passion and promise unapologetically. I'm your host, Michelle Hardy, bringing you pep talks to help you overcome obstacles and take bold steps forward. Tune in, get inspired, and let's make progress on purpose. Go for it, sis. Hey, hope everyone is well. I am doing an intro to the video that you're about to see. It is a video of me recording my testimony. I actually recorded it in July of this year, and either July or August, but I know that this is the time to release it. I thought that I was going to release it earlier in the year, but I know for a fact that this week is the week that it is supposed to be released. I've had so much confirmation. And to be honest, I was fearful to release it. Like, I recorded it and then I got fearful. But I got the confirmation that I needed, and I know that the time is now. And I want to be obedient. So what you're about to watch is me telling my story, my testimony about my experience in my 20s. And it's with the church that I was a part of for about 7 years. And to be honest, the experience that I had is traumatic, but my story doesn't end there. I can tell you now that my experience has taught me a lot. It's ultimately made me closer to God, made me a better woman, made me more vulnerable, made me more compassionate. It's also given me perspective in life. I'll also share this. I have done the work to heal from the space that I was in, not only during that time, but also after that time, right? It takes place during a time, like I said, when I was in my 20s. And so from about 23 to 29, I was there. And then the next year, literally, for the next year, I did some therapy, intense therapy. It wasn't long around that time after that I met my husband, but he became my boyfriend, and then my fiance, and then a year later, my husband. That took place after I left. But I'll tell that story. So I'm recording this intro to let you know today is Friday, September 13th, 2024. I know that by the time this airs will be about a week after this intro, but I am telling you that I got my confirmation today, and so I'm looking forward to what God does, because I know that it's time. So thank you for tuning in. It's long, but it will bless you. And like I said at the end of the video, it's only up from here. All right. Thank you. Take care. In 2015, August 29th, 2015, to be exact, I left what I thought was a church and now know was not a church, not a ministry, a true ministry, but really was a cult. And my story was that I was groomed and made to believe lies that, although I knew it was awkward and weird, I would have to dispel and help you understand how I got to where I was. I started at this, let's just call it a church. I started at the church at about the age of 23. I was fresh out of college, and I actually started going there I was invited by a friend who was the musician there, and I stayed in this church for 7 years, and I didn't stay there. I wasn't, made to stay there, so to speak, but through and where my mindset was at the time, it kept me there. This is hard because as I have gone over it in my mind and as I have thought about my story, although I'm on the other side, I know that, it's painful to rehash. But anyway, let's jump into it. At the age of 23, I entered into a church that was led by a man. His man was married, and he immediately took to me. Not just me, but it was a bunch of us who were very young, and most of us were in our 20s. A couple of people may have been in their 30s here and there. Throughout the years that I was there, I was separated from my family in terms of being isolated, and thought that, and made to think that my church family was family. I, at the time when I got there, was in a relationship, ended that relationship, which wasn't necessarily the worst thing. It wasn't ideal for me. It wasn't the healthiest situation either. Or not healthy, it was fine, but it wasn't, what I really desired. And now I can say that in hindsight, right? But more importantly, I was manipulated into believing that the ministry, the pastor, and the teachings were healthy and true. And even when I knew it wasn't, there was just so much to my story. I mean, there is so much to my story that made me stay and made me believe. And more so made me stay even when I didn't believe. So on day one, I can remember this so clearly. When I first went to the church, I was invited by one of my friends, someone I had met in college, and he was like, "Oh, you gotta come to this church. It's a lot of young people there. The pastor's really charismatic, and I play the keys there. We're gonna have a great time." So at the time, my best friend and the guy that I was, actually, no, I wasn't dating him yet. I don't think. No, I couldn't have been dating him yet. But the guy, another guy who I knew, I was just friends with, we decided to go. And when we went, we had a great time. We had church, we sang, we did all the things. It's a Pentecostal church. And so, you get that Pentecostal experience, and we loved it. Went back another time, ended up joining by the second or third time that we went. And within that time, I remember the pastor called me. He called another one of my best friend, actually. And I remember when he called her, I was like, why is he calling you? I thought that was very strange, because I'm like, because actually my friends, all of us, we were out bowling. So the two guys that I knew, the one who invited me and my best friend, we went out bowling, and she got the call, and it was in the evening. And I'm like, why is he calling you? Where's his wife? And I remember saying that to her. So I thought that was strange, but I'm like, okay, maybe that's just what, He does. So a couple of, days or so go by. He calls me too. And just talking generally, making, small talk, but developing, I guess a relationship, so to speak. Fast forward, a couple of weeks go by, and I have to say, at the time, I'm 23, but I'm not new to church, right? Neither me nor my friend, we're not new to church. We have we preached in churches. I sang on the praise team. I danced. My girlfriend, she was a preacher. So these things are things that we always did. So when we came to the ministry and as we got more familiar with the church, we were put in position to do those things there. And so through those commonalities, we kind of developed presence in the church and position. And I remember us being on this pastor's care committee where we were made to raise money for the pastor. So there was tithe, there was offering, but then there was a pastor's offering that we had to not only teach the church about, but also be a part of. And there were, that went on for a while. We did all of those things for a couple of months. And then one particular day, I remember my best friend leaving the church. And I'm like, that's odd. Like, it just literally came out of nowhere. So I called her, and I guess for whatever reason she didn't answer at the time, because I had found out that she had left through the pastor. So when I talked to the pastor, he was telling me this lie that I now know, which I feel like it doesn't really matter what the lie was, but I know that it was a lie. But he was telling me a lie about why she left. And in that same conversation, he's telling me, but you gotta stay close, get close to me, all of this other stuff, right? And so I had questions then, but he also began to tell me things that he and my best friend had talked about relating to me that made me want to separate myself from her. And the way that he told me these things, I was literally convinced that he was telling the truth, right? So maybe a day or so went by, my best friend called me, and when she called me, I didn't answer the phone. So she texted me and said, hey, I need to chat with you, whatever. And so at this point, I had kind of developed a relationship with the pastor where when she called me, I told him, and he told me not to respond to her, not to not to engage. So I listened. She then wrote me an email, I believe it was an email, just trying to reach out to me and let me know that, she loved me. Whatever I was hearing, whatever I was believing, it wasn't necessarily true. To be careful. And I told the pastor about it, and he was just like, ignore her, blah, 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 blah. I even saw her in the grocery store. And because I had heard so much so many damaging things um, that I was told, um, I avoided her in the grocery store. But at the time and in my mind, I'm like, shoot, whatever. So her and I ended up not speaking until I left the cult 7 years later. Um, from that time when my best friend left to, I guess, a couple months go by, the grooming ramped up because now he had to convince me that he was true, he the real deal, um, and I guess I believed him. One of the things that he did almost immediately was make me really important. So he started calling me his best friend. His BFF was what I was called. His wife was like even nodding her head with it. Like he just like really, one thing about him is very manipulative. He would tell the same story or the same things, say the same things over and over again, tell the same story over and over again so that you would believe that it was true. And he would say these things across the pulpit in meetings in the church. He would come to praise team rehearsal and just start talking about things that was like he was so in control. And the only way I could describe it is like we were on a chessboard and everybody in the church, mostly women, a couple of guys sprinkled in, but everybody in the church was on that chessboard. You could not go to the mall with one of them without him knowing about it. It was like he was the most important person in the church or in the world at that time. We were given money, but we were taught to give so much money away. And you got to remember, a lot of us lived at home with our parents. We didn't have responsibilities. Matter of fact, the people who did come, who were like a little older, had responsibility. Now that I'm thinking about it, those people didn't last because it just didn't make sense for them to stay. And then when people would leave, he would be like, I mean, they would become public enemy number one. He would dog them out, right? For the most part. Or just begin to tell their business, tell things about them that we really should not have known. So as I said, I became like kind of close to him, very very, he would call me all the time. When I say all the time, I had to keep my phone on a ringer. I ended up like having a sound that was just for him, because anytime I missed a call, it would be like issue. And he wasn't like dogmatic in the beginning. It wasn't like, why you ain't answer my call. It would be like, hey, I called you, you didn't answer. I text you, you didn't respond. And I was like, okay, in my head I'm like, so like, because I just didn't really have the investment in that time. um but over time and through manipulation, he made me like really have a fear that if I didn't answer his calls, it was a problem. Hey, hey, so sorry. I had to interrupt really quickly to tell you about an amazing resource that is betterhelp.com, which is an online therapy service that I can speak for. When I tell you talking to a licensed therapist has helped me get to the root of my issues, sis, you definitely want to jump on this. BetterHelp will match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 24 hours. There's a broad range of experts on the network, so you do not have to worry about what you want to discuss. There is somebody who is waiting to talk to you. I promise you, this could be the best conversation that you ever have. And Progress on Purpose podcast listeners get a special discount of 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/POP. And I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out. Visit betterhelp.com/POP and start that conversation today. It may be the best and most important conversation that you have in your life. That's betterhelp.com/POP. BETTERHelp.com/POP. Okay, let's get back to the show. Right. Obviously that didn't happen in the beginning, but it ended up happening later down the line. So, within the next, I guess, year or so, the grooming like really continued, really ramped up. Because I was, in a position of like in the church, I was on the praise team. I was, dancing. I was doing all kinds of things. He then later made me an administrator, the administrator of the church. So I was like being called upon all the time to handle different things, write letters, do this, do that. And I want to say it's important to know that we were a part of a body of churches, but we never fellowshiped with anyone. So although there was like a governing body, so to speak, we were very isolated. And at the time, I didn't see it as a red flag, but clearly it's a red flag, right? One of the things that I know to be true is he harped on my vulnerabilities. So I need to tell you a little bit about me. Like I was a straight A student, did all the things, right? Checked all the boxes. I think at the time at 23, I had just graduated from college. I may have had, I think I was starting to work in my profession at the time. I don't even think I had gone back. I don't remember if I had a master's degree yet, but I was, studious, right? Not only that, I had my own car. I had a good paying job. I still lived at home, but I was mature. And so I wasn't like an idiot, right? Still not. But I did have holes. I had vulnerabilities. I didn't realize it until much later. But hindsight is 2020. I now understand how mentally I was in a position to be taken advantage of, right? And I don't apologize for that because that's life, right? We all have things that hem us up. But him being, who he is and a narcissist and, a manipulator, he definitely harped and sought out those things, not just in me, but in everybody. Again, hindsight being 2020, it's clear as day that all of us on that chessboard, his wife included, were manipulated. So, for me, I had certain voids that I didn't recognize at the time, but that allowed him to easily slide in, right? So by him bringing me close to him, it filled a void for me because, and I didn't notice until later, much later when I started to do my healing work, but my dad and I were very, very close. Like me and my dad, two peas in a pod, right? I want to say maybe around, I don't even remember what year. Some of it's a blur. But he started to get sick. My dad had prostate cancer. He had other sicknesses, illnesses that he had to prioritize. And so in doing that, our relationship kind of shifted. It wasn't until much later, like I said, on my healing journey, when I talked to my dad about what I felt was just a separation. he's the one who told me, like, Michelle, you don't remember? I was sick. I became sick. And so I didn't want you to see that, right? And of course it broke me then. But, you know, thinking through how I got to that place, that was it. That was my spot of weakness. So he filled that spot the pastor filled that spot by pulling me close to him, by, you know, giving me a sense of, you know, being a daughter. And it was in that space that I became like an open book, like between that and, you know, just the other manipulative ways that he had. He had my money, right? He had my mind. It just spiraled out of control. So we went to Tampa, Florida. This was coming into the end of the first year. We went to a conference, church conference, and not just, so it was myself, a bunch of other people. I think it was maybe like, I don't know, let's say 10 of us total. His wife went, a couple of women. I don't remember, but I want to say maybe at least one guy went. And so we went on a church trip, right? I remember getting a text that was like, hey, come driving with me. Let's just, you know, drive around. And I'm like, okay. You know, I thought it was kind of weird because I'm like, what you doing? Like, what you mean? Like, where your wife at? You know, it was kind of my question for a while. And I, again, in the mindset that I was in, I'm like, okay, whatever. And because, you know, I'm his BFF and all that, right? So I did. So we driving around. We go see the stadium, Buccaneer Stadium at the time. I don't know if it still is. We just driving around town in the car that was rented, right? It's like a van. And we're talking. I don't remember what we were talking about. We were talking. And we pull up to like a spot. He parks. We're still just talking, just sitting there talking. I remember the conversation started to turn sexual, but not me and him. He was asking me questions about a relationship that I had entered into with one of the guys that I told you about at the very beginning, who was my friend. We had a relationship. So within that year, I entered into a relationship with him, but was made to see by the pastor that he wasn't the right guy. And that was another experience that I had in that time frame that helped me to realize that, oh, he may have some validity, right? Because he truly, like the guy, my friend, truly wasn't a good guy for me. Like he was just not, like he was a cheater, kind of, or he just had like, you know, eyes over here and over there. And it just like didn't work. So that helped to, again, build trust, right? So he was asking me questions, sexual questions about me and the guy, and I was answering them. You know, I'm grown, you know, whatever. And I don't remember how we exited the conversation, but I remember getting back into we were like driving back around, and no, I'm sorry, that's not what happened. I remember at the end of, you know, I don't remember how we exited the conversation, but I do remember I remember him reaching over me to take my seatbelt off and climbing on top of me. And in that moment, I'm like, however, before I could say, do anything in that moment, he starts kissing me. And within a matter of less than a minute or two, engaged with me. And it happened so fast. I didn't stop it. And I believe I didn't stop it because so much had already been like put in me to know to not stop it. Like we had not to know to not stop it. So much had already been transpired, I guess, in a non-sexual way, but we had conversations, not about us, but just other things that obviously are inappropriate. But I never would have thought it would have gone there, right? And then because the conversation never went there with him and I, it just went there in general. So I remember after, and you know, we're talking a couple of minutes after, we drove back. He dropped me off at my hotel, and I remember my girlfriend at the time was like, "Where were you?" And I'm like, "Oh, pastor called me, and I went out driving with him." And she was just like, "Oh, okay." And she kind of gave me this look like, "All right." That oh, okay, all right is very important, because not too long after that trip she left, and it wasn't until years later I found out why. From the time of that trip, for many years after, I say like at least 2 years after, we continued to have a situationship, right? Where he would call me, I would go, and he kind of like dated me. Took me to all these fancy restaurants, and mind you, I'm still like doing all the things. I'm still preaching in the church. I'm still doing all the stuff, like normal, but there's a situationship there. Like I said, he would date me. We went to all these different restaurants, 5-star, 4-star, 5-star restaurants. There were hotels, there were all the things. Within that time too, now, you know, not now, but hindsight being 2020, I could start to think about other people, or the women who would like be in the church and then leave. And then when they would leave, they were like, you know, he would always have a story as to why they left. Oh, they called my wife and they said this, but you know, that's a bunch of nonsense. Da, 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 da. And it didn't register with me at the time. But I now know what had happened, right? So a couple years go by. For the most part, he's kind to me, you know. Even when I would like do something wrong in the church, it was like he would tear me down and then build me right back up. Tear me down in public and then call me and build me up in private and take me out and this and that and buy me gifts and do all the things, right? With my money, because I'm pretty sure, because he didn't work. So the money that he was using was from the church, from people in the church. Myself included. I gave thousands of dollars directly into his hands. So couple years go by, of course, more women are joining, more people are joining. He's, and as they would come, it was almost like say someone came to the church to visit, right? A friend of a friend. He would be like, "Oh, how did this person enjoy the church? Do they like it? Da-da-da. Like, have them come back, have them this, have them that." And he would develop a relationship with them and then suck them in, right? And although I know many of those relationships or people he had sexual relationships with too. I can't say it was all, but I do know that he used their vulnerabilities to to um to suck them in, right, and to keep them there. I remember when also remember when it started kind of crumbling, right? So fast forward a couple of years, one of the key moments that I can remember really starting to peel my scales is as certain people started leaving, like people that I had developed relationships with. And not only that, before that, like certain questions that, he would ask me. He asked me to, do certain things sexually with other. He asked. I remember him asking me, "Who do you like? Who could you see yourself sleeping with in the church?" And I'm like, "What? Nobody." Like, what is this? I remember one time telling him about a guy that I was interested in, and him telling me off, like clean telling me off. And in my head, I'm like, I'm a single woman. Like, what's the problem? But I guess I was his, and so little things like that would transpire, getting told off, getting, in trouble for little things. Always on edge. I promise you, I was always, always, always on edge. I left things that I was a part of. And I'm sorry, I failed to say that in the beginning, but I left things that I was a part of that brought me joy. Like, I was singing in a group. I was, I had friends that I just kind of like cut off. I was working in a company that I really, really, really enjoyed, that I cut off for the church, right? I was a part of a lot of different things, and I cut all of that off, over time. So, imagine being isolated, not having, like, not having anybody to really talk to about what's going on. Like, my mom, and even my family members, they knew I was in the church, and they would visit from time to time just to kind of, see what was going on. But it seemed normal, like, because he knew they were there, so it would be like, it wouldn't be no weird stuff happening. He wasn't saying nothing kind of crazy. He would make jokes. He would just kind of like be normal, charismatic, kind of like what I saw when I first came, right? So it certain red flags, as I said, started to pop up, and the scales started to fall off my eyes, but I still stayed there because I was still kind of, under on the chessboard. I still also was involved in the work of the ministry. So, it was very just like convoluted. But I also remember not feeling good about being cursed out, being, told that I was all kinds of stuff, like, "Oh, you're not good for nothing but laying on your back. Oh, your ideas are stupid." I would have ideas about certain things and be told that my ideas were stupid, and just like really torn down at my core. And as I was saying, as certain people started leaving, it started to kind of open my eyes, as I also saw how he treated other people, um, it started to open my eyes, both how you treated people well and how you treated people bad. Obviously, how you treated people bad was like, whoa. But I was also paying attention to like how he was treating other people good, like other women good too. And I remember one of the women who was married but separated from her husband came. I'm sorry, she just like up and left. And I'm like, what is going on? Right? And he called me and he was bawling, crying. Um, he's like, I loved her. She left me, all this stuff. I did all of this for her. I did all of that for her. I loved her. And I'm sitting here like, what is happening? Um, and I remember telling him like, oh, okay, what do you want me to do with that? Like, because at the time I knew what was going on with me and him, but I didn't ever think something going on with somebody else too. But hearing what he was telling me, it made me like, it hurt me. And then on top of that, he's like, you pushed me to her, and when you told me about this guy and how you wasn't into me and all of this, it pushed me to her. Like, he made all this, he blamed me for it, right? um so I knew that was like from the time that she left. I think maybe like 2 months or 3 months later at the most, I left too, right? So very short, I'm out. Maybe even shorter. I started to see that I wasn't the only one, obviously. And I remember just being very tired of the abuse, the verbal abuse that I had endured, the sexual abuse, the spiritual abuse that I had endured. And I was done. And so in the next part, I'll tell you how I left, because my phone is dying and I need to charge it. But I'll tell you how I left, and move forward from there. So thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to be vulnerable. But part 2 coming. Okay, so hey, I am back. And in part 1, I told you much of the my testimony in terms of like the things that caused a lot of trauma in my life. I try my best to share what I could remember clearly even as I started looking at it. There's so much that I left out, and please, if you have questions, just ask. But more than anything, I am not sharing this to for defamation in any way. I am sharing this because I know that I'm not by myself. I know that there are so many people in this world who have had, if not similar experiences, find some alignment. And more importantly than that, I want to help you to understand that there is so much on the other side. Yes, you will have to do your work to heal, but there is so much promise on the other side of healing. Um, and your purpose is connected to what you went through or what you may currently be going through, depending on where you are as you watch this. Um, so, again, God makes no mistakes. And the very thing that you are experiencing in your life, it has purpose. Um, and I'm sharing because, and it took me a long time to realize this, but I am sharing because my life, and everything that I believe and everything that I stand for is a result of the relationship that I have cultivated on the other side. I had a relationship with God since I was about 14. And I remember saying to myself, oh, life is pretty easy. I don't really go through much. And I remember the old people used to say, keep on living, keep on living. I had no idea that, you know, I would experience what I experienced. But, you know, I'm grateful because, um, you know, I can truly say that my understanding, my trust, my faith, my belief, my drive, is connected to, in many ways, being on the other side, right? So, I think in part one, I ended telling you how, or I was starting to tell you about my exit. So, it was on a Thursday. So August 29th, 2015 was a Saturday. So the Thursday before that, which would have been the 27th, um, I remember sitting on the couch in my parents' house, and I was like laying on the couch, right? And I remember something just dropped in my spirit that was like, look up spiritual abuse. Now, I got to say this, the day before, I remember bawling my eyes out, just like crying, crying, crying so much because I was so heartbroken. I was so hurt. I was so broken, from all that I had just been through. And I was hurt. Like I was really, really hurt. And I was just like, God, I I was like, I can't no more. Like, you gotta get me out of here. And I had no idea how. I had no idea how I was going to leave, how I was going to get out. Um, I remember when I was bawling my eyes out, just thinking, I I want to get out, but I don't know how. So the next day or two, which would have been Thursday, I remember sitting on the couch. It was a love seat, a white ivory love seat in my parents' home. I was laying on the couch, and I something dropped in my spirit that said, "Look up spiritual abuse." So that's what I did. I googled it and clicked on maybe the first article, and every last thing that was on that list, I had experienced. Every last thing that was on that list, I had experienced. Um, and it broke me. But I also, something in my spirit registered that it was now or never, go, you know? And so I called my girlfriend who, had visited the church a while back. And I remember when she visited, she was like writing all these notes. It was her and one of her friends, but she was writing all these notes and, seemingly engaged. Um, and I remember that night that she visited, she called me and she was like, "Do you like it? Do you like your church?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because we were taught to, big up our church. Never say nothing bad about your ministry or especially your pastor or nobody in the church. Like, you don't let nobody talk about your pastor, right? So I'm like, yes, I love it here, and in my mind, I'm like, yeah, um, try to convince her that it's great, right? So she was just like, okay, I'm gonna pray for you. I'm like, all right. Like, I kind of dismissed it, but it still kind of, you know, weighed in my spirit, so to speak. And that may have been a couple of weeks before this day, right? Which I'm so grateful because God created a door, and I didn't even know the door was being created, for me. But anyway, so when that when that dropped in my spirit to look up spiritual abuse, I looked it up, read it. Everything that was on it was what I had experienced. She was the first person I called. And um I was like, "Hey, I need to talk to you. No, I need to talk to you today. Like, we need to talk." So she was at the hair salon, And so I'm like, I'm coming. So I go to the hair salon. Um, and I just tell her everything. She was sitting under the dryer, and I just told her everything. It was her. There's just three of us in the hair salon: me, her, and her hairstylist, who's the other person who came. I told her everything, 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 everything. She asked me some questions. I told her, and she was like, I knew. She was like, I knew something was going on, and she took out that notebook that she had when she was writing those notes. It was in her car, so we walked to her car, and she took it out and showed me the things that she wrote about the pastor, and um, how he was walking in disobedience, and how he was operating in witchcraft, and how he was, he had fallen. He had experienced, some type of like falling away. And I can't remember verbatim, obviously, but I remember those things there. And I I was like, I don't know what to do. She was like, you need to fast. You need to fast, and you got to get up out of there. She's like, um, you have to leave like ASAP. And I'm like, yes, I want to leave. I just don't know how. She's like, you got to fast, you got to pray, and got to tell you what to do. So um, that was a Thursday. That Friday, I fasted. I packed up everything that was in my house, my parents' house, that was pertaining to the church. Now, I had a lot of, because I was an administrator, but also, um, so I had a lot of like, things. I also, in my parents' basement, had things from the church because we rented a space, so things had to be brought in every week. So that stuff stayed at my parents' house. Um, I took that stuff and um, you know, got it all together. It took all the gifts, all the, certificates, licenses, things that I had earned, earned in the organization of the church. Took all that stuff, bagged it up. Not the stuff that belonged to the church, but the gifts and all of the certificates and stuff. I bagged everything up and I put it outside on a curb. And I literally threw up and waited for the garbage man to come, and so I got rid of that stuff. I took a little walk. Like, I just had to cleanse. Um, and um, took all the stuff that was, um, gathered all the stuff that was in the basement from the church, got the church credit card, put it in an envelope, wrote a letter explaining what I was doing. I actually still have the letter because I typed it up. Um, I emailed it and I put it in an envelope in case there was any confusion. Everybody gonna know. And I I sat down and had a conversation with my mom and told her much of what had transpired. I didn't feel comfortable telling her about the sexual part, but my mom ain't stupid, so she could probably figure things out, right? Because no one would have that much control over you unless there was a physical attachment, right? Um, so I sat down with her, talked to her, and she's like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" So I was like, I gotta, I need." She didn't ask me what I was gonna do because she knew that I was leaving. She's like, "You want me to come with you?" And this was to drop off the things to another member's house. And I was like, yeah. And it was me and my mom and my nephews at the house. So we got in the car, put all the stuff in the car. Yeah, I know my mom ride or die. Put all the stuff in the car, dropped the stuff off at the other member's house, gave the envelope with the key, the church key, the debit card, and a letter to the person whose house it was. At the stop sign of that corner, I pressed send on the email and was out. From that time, I returned home, dropped them off, and I left. Because I didn't want to be there. I had a feeling homeboy was going to show up, and he did. Came to my doorstep, crying or crying. Um, my mom's like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "Where's Michelle? I need to talk to Michelle. That was my best friend. That was this and that." My mom's like, "Do you need me to call EMS? Like, what's going on?" Okay, part of this is a little funny. She's like, "What's up? You need me to call EMS?" And he's like, "No, I just need to talk to her." And my mom, in the back of her mind, she already knew what was up, and she also wasn't about to let him in the house, even though I wasn't there. But my mom, she had to play dumb. So um, she, was like, yeah, she's not here. So eventually, after a little while, left. He left. He called me 800, 900 billion times. I ended up, so sorry, this was on Saturday. So Saturday was when I dropped all the stuff off, right? Sunday morning, I called Sprint, changed my number because he was like blowing my phone up. Changed my number, and I was on my way to church with the two friends that, the one friend that I told everything to, and the other friend. So that was the first day. So that would be August 30th, that I began my exodus, I guess. Or that was the exodus. I was done. I was done. Very significant day for me. In that day, I was in church. Just, you can imagine, I had to purge. Like, I was so heavy. I had so much on me, and I, the pastor at this church now prayed for me, and like called me up, prayed for me. Another Pentecostal church, so you already know, or if you don't know, it's a prophet as well, and just kind of knew what I needed. I took notes on that day. I still had them of what God was revealing to me in those moments. One thing I could say is, um, when you seek God, even in your lowest places, He is there. I vividly remember hearing His voice that day, and I was just writing. I remember Him telling me um, certain things about my life that are true to this day. Um, so fast forward, um, my healing journey began. So when I left um, my parents' house that Saturday, I stayed at another friend's house. I didn't return for a while because I just needed a break. It was this friend who then who I unloaded on. Oh, I'm forgetting a very important part. So one of the things that transpired was there was a car that was registered to me but belonged to the pastor. He registered it in my name because he had an out of state license, and clearly, child, it wasn't hard to do. So I in the letter wrote that he had 2 weeks, 14 days to return my license plates to me, or I was going to go to the police. So when those 2 weeks expired and I still did not have my license plate, I went to the police department. Let me show you how God works. I I went to the police department with I had my friend who I was staying with go with me. Um, and when I was leaving the police department, um, because I had to, have them mediate to get my plates, which I did, and I was leaving the police department to get to. I didn't see him. He dropped them off to the police department, and I picked them up, or I got them back, and I don't remember if it all happened in the same day. But nonetheless, when I was leaving the police department, I remembered that I needed to tell the police officer that the plates were, I don't remember what I had to tell the police, but I had to get out and run back across the street because the officer was standing outside. Now, I thought I put my car in park, but I must have put it in neutral. So when I closed the door, I kind of like got out the car, closed the door, and scurried across the street. My car started backing up. It backed up in a complete U, like the perfect U. Now, when it backed up, it literally backed up out the driveway onto the street and parked in front of a police car. But on its way out, of backing up and getting into park, it ran over some bushes, and when it hit the police car, it damaged the side and back of the bumper. My car at the time would have been maybe like 7 years old or so. Do you know that the damage that was done to my car totaled my car out? Because when you think about the value, it totaled my car out. There was absolutely not one scratch on the police car's bumper. My car totaled. Let me tell you how God worked in that scenario. I was praying for a fresh start. I had already changed my phone number, I had already changed my email address, and God changed my car. I got a new license plate, everything. He even gave me finances from the total out to purchase a new car because that car was paid off. Don't tell me about my God. So, and not only I mean, there's so much more I could tell. I could tell you how the day that I went to the church with my girlfriend, my two girlfriends, and on August 30th, 2015, got prayed for, all of that. That my husband, my now husband, was the drummer of that church. I didn't meet him then, but that's when he saw me. Um, so yeah. Um, there's there's a lot in the timing and the just the how awesome God is. Um, so the friend that I was staying with, he's the one who started telling me about therapy and connected me with his therapist. So I started going to therapy, and I did a year of therapy. During that time, I tried to visit churches, but I was too overwhelmed with emotion and feeling. Like I would feel like if somebody came to hug me, I would have almost like an anxiety attack because I'm like, okay, are you hugging me because you want me to join your church? Are you hugging me because you have some ulterior motive, or are you genuine? With that hug. So it took a toll, and I remember sitting in my car in front of my parents' house saying, God, I just want to be normal again. Like I just want to be normal. I want to have I was so traumatized by everything that had happened, and I just remember praying for normalcy. A lot of tears, a lot of you know, lot of reflection that has taken place, and I could share more about that. But it took a minute to get here. I remember when my husband and I were dating, um, and he's a drummer, right, of a church, amongst other things. But you know, it was kind of hard for me to go to church, because I just had so much baggage, and I had been in therapy a little bit to kind of start to unravel that. It was in therapy that I really understood how I got there, how I became so vulnerable, right? So the work that I had done taught me to understand how I entered the vulnerable space because of the void, um, in the, you know, relationship with my dad when he got sick, which I now remember. It was much younger. I may have been like in my early teens that he had gotten sick. Um, so, um, yeah, there was a lot of work that took place, and work that continues. I remember when I got married, I had to do more work. I had to go back to therapy because I a lot of the like sexual trauma that I experienced and did not even know was there came to the surface when my husband and I were to engage, because the um certain feelings, certain places, certain things, like there's certain things I could not connect with. It would literally give me a panic attack, and I knew that um it wasn't anything that he was doing. It was literally my um my PTSD, my experience. So I wanted to get the work. I wanted to get work done around that. I wanted to get tools to be able to, um, you know, heal in that area. So I went and saw a sex therapist to help with that work. Um, and truthfully, the work was worth it because it helped me to be able to um, just move differently, engage differently, with my husband and just in general, right? Um, so what the devil meant for evil, God truly turned it around for my good. Now I don't think that's in the Bible, but it's definitely some church vernacular. What I can say is that, as the scripture says, all things. Now, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose. It is the truth. It is my story. It's what I stand on. It's what I believe. Um, Even now, sharing this testimony, which, took a while to share. I'm grateful to be in a place where I can share. I've done the work to be able to share. Um, I know that impact is coming. I know that um, if you've stayed around this long, this was for you to listen to, witness, experience, and hear for a reason. And it's up to you to pray, to understand, and discover what that reason is. And if you have questions, or even comments, keep them nice. But if you have comments and questions, reach out to me, because I'm here. I'm an open book. Um, it's about impact for me. I'm very clear on that now. Um, and one of the most important reasons why I decided to share is because, and Sarah Jakes Roberts talks about this in her book, Power Moves, that the power of fear, the power of not being vulnerable, because those things have power. It was preventing me from things like being consistent, from things like being persistent in my dreams and things that I want to do. It was preventing me from just being my most authentic and vulnerable self. And I don't want that anymore. I'm in a space, and I've been decluttering, I've been editing, I've been doing a whole lot of like cleansing. I'm in a space where I don't want nothing to get in the way. No pride, no ego, no nothing but the power of God, um to like moving forward, right? And my um me sharing my story is cleansing for me. Um and I know that my life, my life's purpose is so impactful on other people and other women specifically, that I gotta be an open book, because the things that I've experienced will help someone else. I'm clear on that. And I'm ready. So if you've been hanging on with me, I appreciate it. I appreciate every listener of the podcast, Progress on Purpose podcast, which was, by the way, birthed as a result of some of the work that I did to heal, right? Go for it, sis. Go for it, sis comes from um, me. It's a mantra um, of me telling myself and telling others um, that the ideas that you have, they're not stupid. The ideas that you have, the things that you desire to do, that business you want to start, that family that you want to lead, that whatever it is that you want to do, like go for it, sis. That is, God gave that to you. And anything that is in your way of allowing you to either be persistent or consistent, I want to remind you that you don't need permission. God already gave it to you. You literally just have to press go. Um, so it's also a reminder to continue, like be consistent, continue to go for it. Go for those dreams, go for those things that you desire, level on up, build whatever it is that you desire to build. And boss up, you know what I'm saying? Like go all the way. And I've learned that. And so in the beginning, Progress on Purpose was about the downloads that I was getting um, in my healing journey. And then ultimately, it kind of fizzled out for a little bit because, I had a couple of kids and whatnot. And then I also was in a space, like I said, where I couldn't produce. I couldn't produce because I was so cluttered. I was so weighed down. But honey, not today. Today is July 29th, 2024. My sister's birthday. Happy birthday. But it's also, honey, it's my birthday too. It's a freeing day for me because today is the day that I understand my purpose. I understand how my purpose is connected to each and every one of you. And it's only up from here. So let's keep going. Um, I love you guys. I appreciate you for hanging in there and listening. Um, More to come because my foot's on the gas now. And I need you to hold me accountable. I need you to check on me. And I want to check on you. So I want you to do this. I want you to share. I want you to send me an email, progressonpurposepodcast@gmail.com. I want you to share and feel free to share. It could be anonymous, whatever. Share your story. And let's begin to have conversations. Let's begin to get this work. Go to therapy. Get the help that you need. You guys know I talk about betterhelp.com. Like whatever help it is that you need, get it. Talk to the people. I still have a therapist that I speak to bi-weekly because, as you can imagine, everything doesn't just come out at one time, right? And as my life continues to build, as I became a mother, as I became a wife, as I became, and still juggling the things that are inside of me, I needed a way to navigate that. So, and I'm sure the same for you. So I say, get the therapy. You can use my code POP at betterhelp.com/POP to get 10% off your first month. But more importantly, honey, just do the work. Like commit to it. Um, it's only for your good. So yes, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm inspired by you, and I appreciate that you've hung in there with me. and it's only up from here. Let's do this. Go for it, sis.